So this is a bit of an afterthought, but since I don't, or at least I haven't yet really included a bunch of data logs on my YouTube channel, I realize a lot of people have probably not familiarized themselves with the data logs of the performance of some of my products. So what you're looking at here, hopefully you can really see this is kind of new for me, putting one on video, is it hasn't been incredibly hot in here lately. In the warmest day, I could go back here into 80s, but what I did was I captured this point right here, and what I did is I time aligned it with the other chart, and so this peak right here is about 77. It's a little over 77 degrees, and so let's go back to the other chart, and what this is, these are actually two simultaneous data loggers. It's a little bit hard to see. I'll blow this up for you in a minute. These are two simultaneous data loggers running in the cooler at opposite corners at the same time. And what I do is I get a picture of the variability of performance and what kind of differential that I get in different parts of the box at different times based on running multiple data loggers. Again, that's neither really here nor there. The thing that's kind of fun about this is this is actually the start of this particular log, so it's kind of hard for you to see. But if we look at this other log, it's also a little difficult to see. Let's change this some. Let's take this out of dashed and go solid and go 2 points. Okay, so now what we have is we have a temperature down in the 60s, okay? Down here on this curve. This is the ambient. And you can see that what I'm doing is I'm just bopping right around here between, say, 60 and 63 RH. Most of the time between 61 and 62 RH, right around in this area, okay? And this is performance down in the 60s. And as if we move across the chart, the important thing is that what you're really not seeing is you're not seeing these types of long strings where you have these pronounced dips in relative humidity, and that you also don't see huge variations in temperature. Now, the system is constantly trimming itself, so somewhere along the line you have to realize, of course, that you get these micro variances, okay? And the important aspect, though, is that the micro variances aren't really noticeable at all by the tobacco, because they simply happen too quickly. They're like frames on a motion picture. You don't see the individual frames, you simply see them linked together, and because tobacco as a hygroscopic substance actually lags the environment, you don't give it enough time to physically change. And that's the whole idea behind one of these systems, where what you don't see are these, pronounced dips, in these cycles that last for, 10, 15, 30 minutes, an hour at a time, like the way a lot of these systems work. So I'm very proud of how these work. So again, follow this line, and we're going now from the 60s in the shop, up past 70. Well, 70's right here, so up past 72, 76 is right here, and then this is 77, and you'll really notice between the two lines of the RH, the frequency of these micro changes, these little micro changes, are more frequent, but the amplitude doesn't really change. And since they're high frequency changes, they really average out to be very, very nice lines very consistent with a set point, and that's what's really important here. And the same goes for temperature. So when I talk about a precision microclimate or a precision humidor, this is what I'm talking about, and this is evidence of it. This is not speculative or theoretical behavior inside the cooler. This is what's really happening by two completely independent instruments that are essentially time-lined. Actually, three independent instruments, because one here is outside, and that's what's picking up the temperature. If we actually looked at the relative humidity line of that as well, you can see that the relative humidity is doing wild things as well during that period of time. It's it's dropping from the mid 50s down to the mid 40s, but you have to remember as well as relative humidity is relative to temperature, so these lines tend to mirror each other. Okay, so we won't get too lost in that. But this is a really good example of how the systems work and why they work and what you get for your money. Let's take a closer look at this here real quick. So again, this is the 77 peak right here, and then this starts to look at a macro view of these micro changes. Okay, and again, you can see where they range, and they're ranging here from again, not even down to as low as 60, but kind of between the 61 and 63 category. And this is how we analyze the performance of these projects. And again, if you really want to take a look at them, I mean, that's this is where we can actually get down to the very particular and fine study of why the humidor is doing what it's doing and why is it doing it over a period of time and over a period of seconds. Again, like a lot of people who think they're studying this interest, you can't do this by looking at it at chunks of minutes or 15 minutes or 30 minutes at a time, because as you do that, I mean, this right here represents 1 minute. Okay, so you can see a lot happens within this span of 1 minute time, and you simply aren't going to see this by taking in an instrument, and this would be a test instrument, and then telling it to take samples here and then a sample here, because when you've done that, you've completely blown this change out. And if this change happened to be really pronounced, say 10 or 15 or 30 RH, you can essentially chop it out with this lower resolution type instrument. So again, while this might be a little bit off the beaten track, it should give you an idea about the pains that I go through to try and make sure that there's a homogeneous environment in the products that I sell, and that in fact they do actually work. I can zoom this back out a little bit. And well, this is a little unfair probably, because I got ranges up here at 110 and RH is at 250. I mean, that doesn't make any sense. So this just makes it look too good because the scales are out of whack. But for all intents and purposes, this is really what you start to get. You start to get essentially straight lines, or what really just pretty much looks like noise in the background when you talk about the processes in your humidor. And again, I apologize, this is actually cheating, because we don't have RHs of 250. Or minus, so there's a range between about 0 and 100, so that's a fair analysis. And the temperature is so good. Look, there's only a range here between 60 and 80. And so you can see very, very little fluctuation with the heat. And ultimately, over time, these are things that these are items that the cigars themselves never see. So again, I hope that brought a little bit of interest and analysis to your decision making. Thanks for watching.